More than likely, if you are tuning in to PH Tidbits, you're interested in something spiritual. I have a poem. My mother and father both have passed on in the last few years, and this was a poem written to one of my cousins. She wrote it to my father, which she called him Uncle Howard, and my mother's name was Dot, and she said, "And Aunt Dot, may God love and bless you, from Pam." This is a young lady, lives in Maine, has a Christian camp, and does things for people. And she wrote this little poem, Such Love. She said, "I've sinned. I've cried in mental pain. In anguish I called out his name. With love my sweet Jesus came to cleanse me of my sin and shame. Your heart must bear my name," said he, the healer of blind and lame. His face was sorrowful with pain. He saw many hearts, black, sinned, and stained. So much he wanted to end my shame, that with his own blood he signed his name. Signed Pam. Beautiful. We all who are saved have that exact same statement. That was our commitment. November 5th, 1972, 3 o'clock in the morning. This old boy you're looking at right here, a full-fledged alcoholic, said, "Jesus, I'm a sinner. Forgive me of my sin. Cleanse me from all unrighteousness and accept me." And he did. And from that day to this, I never took another drink. Bigger than that, I never swore another cuss word. And I was a man that cussed every time I opened my mouth. But when God saved me, he cleansed me up. And he will you too. Let's look at the book of Judges. You say, where are you going to start, Brother Peter? You're back on the YouTube. You've been gone for a while. You lost your wife 3 years ago, which I did. And it threw me in such a turmoil that I haven't been on the YouTube for 2 or 3 years. It took me a very long adjustment to adjust to be living in a house without a woman I had for 57 years. She didn't tell me what to do, but she guided and leaded me in what to do and what not to do. And it's different. Anyway, the book takes its name, the book Judges takes its name from the leaders which God raised up to deliver Israel. They were called judges. They were men put, and women, by the way, put in charge of the leadership from the oppression of their enemies. Now, when they were oppressed by the enemies, it took a good leader, like many other of the leaders. One of them was Joshua, to calm the people. And then there were the judges, those men that were put in as judges, so the people wouldn't be confused. Now, they were ordinary judges. They were people just like everybody else, but God gave them an insight to fulfill the judicial functions that needed to be in the land to keep peace and to keep it from being anarchy. And so the human author of the book, though, was, however, a Jewish tradition had been assigned to this man Samuel. So he was the authorship of this book of Judges, the man Samuel. Now the book begins with history. Now many things begin with history. Everything actually begins with history. I begin with history. I was born in the state of Maine, moved all over the United States with a traveling preacher father, and moved around. And therefore, my history was I was born in the state of Maine. Well, here we've got an author that was born as a Jew, Jewish, and he was known, however, for the tradition and was assigned the authorship to Samuel. Now, the book begins with history at the end of Joshua, and covers almost 300 years. This little book covers 300 years of history. At least 5 judges are mentioned, and they overlapped each other and the priesthood. Now, the judges and the priest were 2 different sets of people, and the priest had a function that ruled the Jewish people, and the judges judged all peoples. And one of them, the first one, was Eli. An early life of Samuel is recorded in the beginning chapters of 1 Samuel, according to John C. Whitcomb, and I've studied behind him the ministry of Othniel, which is a book that began in 1373, and the ministry of Samson. Now, Othniel was a man, and I'm pronouncing it wrong, I'm sure. And then the ministry of him, and it began in 1373, and the ministry of Samson, the last judge. Now remember, Samson, the strong man, was the last judge. It ended in 1049 BC. What's the purpose of having a book in the Bible that explains all of these things? Well, if you've got a math book, in the beginning it tells you why 2 times 2 is 4. It tells you how to do division, how to do addition, how to do subtraction, and it explains to you what it is. And if you have one on English, it explains to you what the words are, the meanings, the pronunciation, how to use them. That's what the Bible is. The Bible is a book that explains to us the things that are in it. And we are to learn those. And what we just named, we went by the book of Judges, that's the name. And we looked at the human author, and that was Samuel. And we looked at the time, and that was 1049 BC. Now we're going to look at the purpose. What is the purpose? The last verse in the book serves a summary of the entire period of Israel's history. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. I swear we are today in a world where every man is doing what's right in his own eyes, leaving God out of the picture, leaving law out of the picture, leaving human relationships out of the picture, leaving all kinds of things out of the picture. They're doing what's right in their own eyes. And believe me, it's causing anarchy in the country. So, in this summary, what was right in their own eyes. Now, we're living in a nation that, by the way, in the chapter 21 through 25 in the book of Judges shows us this group of people that lived that way. And you can read that and associate it with today. The practice of situational ethics was in full bloom. That's where we are today. Situational ethics. And it's in full bloom today. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. And then he suffered the oppression by enemies, because every case, everything that happens, there's a judgment. And if you do that which is right in your own eyes and it's wrong, there'll be a judgment, a bad judgment. Now, if you do that which is right in your own eyes and it happens to be right, there'll be a good judgment. So most of the time, it's bad judgment. As a background to all this sin that took place in that period of time in this book, the book of Judges, the amazing grace of God recovering and restoring whenever the nation repented. Now, we, as the United States of America, we are a nation. If we repented like the children of Israel did, as a nation, they called the whole nation together and said, whole nation, listen, follow what we're saying. We all need to repent. And the whole nation repented, And God repented of the evil that he was going to put on that nation. And they came back and restored. And they were restored in great faith in God. The last verse of the book serves as a summary to the entire period of Israel's history. And that was what I just said, was that they all did in their own eyes. Now let's take a look at the introduction to the period of time of Judges. And that is in chapter 1. These chapters describe, through 1 and 2, these chapters describe the incomplete conquest of the land. And by failing to achieve complete victory over her enemies, because she had left God out and was trying to do it on her own, she lost control. So Israel found her enemies getting stronger and raising up, became her oppressor. Wow. God's instrument of judgment is to put a country under oppression sometimes. The country has said, no God for me. And God said, well, if you don't want me, I will let you get oppressed by another country that will not give you the liberty that I've given you, that will call into place martial law and all other kinds of things. There will be food shortages, there will be gas shortages, there will be every kind of shortage you can think. And if you don't believe it, it could come down to martial law where you couldn't even go get it in your car and go to work in the morning. You say, it won't happen, Peter. You watch the way we're headed right now. The way we're headed right now. The right ruler get in here, and you think it's tough over there in Russia and over there right now in those places? You let the right ruler get here, you're going to have the same problem that we have now over there. So, the introduction period to the Judges now we were talking about. She had enemies, yes. Israel found her enemies getting stronger and rising up and becoming more and more her oppressor. Hey, we have allowed some countries in this world to be so, we are so indebted to them and they are so indebted to us that this thing could flip-flop. I hate to go this far back, but because I studied the First World War and the stuff that we loaned other countries, shiploads and shiploads and shiploads of grain and stuff that they were to repay and never repaid and never took care of the debt. The debt is still on the book unless it's been erased. It's still on the book. And so we find that becomes a cycle, and it can become a cycle like in Judges right here. Look at the cycle of Judges. Chapter 1 was called their first apostate. Apostate. They were away from God. They were apostatizing God. They were away from Him. So they were in apostasy. And that is they were in the Mesopotamian oppression. That's chapter 3, 1 through 11. They were under the Mesopotamian rulers and they were under oppression. The second apostasy, they were under Moab and under the Philistine oppression, chapter 3, 12 through 31. The third oppression, they were under the Canaanite people, the Canaan oppression, chapter 4, 1, 5 through 31. And then the fourth oppression was they were the Midian oppression. These Midianites, that was their name. They were Midianites. They were a tribe of people that came against Israel in a great way and oppressed Israel. And Israel was under their oppression. And then on the fifth apostasy became the civil war over there. Not unlike our civil war, except our civil war was here on this ground too, just like that civil war was on their own ground. Chapter 8, 33 through 10 and 5. And then the sixth apostasy. And what is apostasy? That's when they were walking away from God. They weren't paying attention to God. They weren't praying. They weren't asking God for power. They weren't asking God for anything. So in chapter 10, 6 and 12 through 15, they were under the oppression of the Amorites. And then the seventh apostasy, they were under the oppression of the Philistines, chapter 13 through 16. And then what was the result at the very end of the Judges? What was the result there? The result was in this period of Judges 17 through 21. Let's look at it. Apostasy in verse 17 and 18 was the temple. They were away from the temple of God. And then the moral filth in the home. We could, oh my goodness gracious sakes alive, you can't turn the TV on without being cussed at. You can't turn the TV on without seeing two grown folks in bed. You can't turn the TV on without seeing nudity. We are suscepting our children today, from little bitty ones all the way up through the high school ones, when we got the TV on, to what the world is portraying as normal. It is not normal for a man to see a woman without clothes on. That is not normal. That is abnormal, and it's not proper. And it's definitely not proper for a child to see the nudity of a man or woman. And so we are in disgrace today. And by the way, I turned a program on the other day, literally on public TV. The man used the Lord's name in vain. Literally on public TV. The man used the Lord's name. Hey, we are going down the drain fast. It's like a whole bunch of toilets was flushed at the same time, and the United States is in the whirlwind. We're in the swoop. When you flush that toilet and you see it going like this, down, that's where we are. We're right in the place, and we may go down. And so we see by studying this book of Judges that we are in this same place. And I'm not going to go any further on this today, because this is all I've studied today for today. And I was supposed to do it in 20 minutes, and I've done it in 18 minutes. So I'm going to call it a day, and we'll see you next time. Right. Bye-bye.